The Asgardian shake into the snake that you cannot trust. And finish
Well,
the
isn't that
classic
interesting?
Asgardian high one.
So I just saw Thor Love and Thunder, directed by Taika Waititi, and it was bad. Surprisingly bad, actually. I love Taika Waititi. Jojo Rabbit was one of my favorite movies of 2019, and What We Do in the Shadows is really funny.
Master, this is pretty macabre.
Even Thor Ragnarok is one of my favorite Marvel movies, so I was actually looking forward to this one. From the trailers, it seemed like it would be fine at worst. It had some bad jokes that were expected from a trailer.
And flick!
But when you look at something with rose-tinted glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. At the beginning of the movie, I realized this wasn't going to be very good. The opening exposition by Korg was fine, but then some alarms started going off in my head with the dialogue. Then Melissa McCarthy shows up, which is when I realized this wasn't going to be very good. Although, ironically enough, her part was the part that made me laugh. That's how low the bar is. At the beginning of the movie, Thor teams up with the Guardians and they do space battles, but the Guardians do nothing. Star-Lord talks a bit to Thor, but that's it. And in the opening narration, Korg just summarized the Thor plotline to the audience. But then Star-Lord does the same thing to Thor, and then the scene basically goes, Thor, I know you're sad because despite living thousands of years, you seem not to know who you are. I didn't know who I was until I found the ones I love. And this scene sucks, but I like how it shows Star-Lord's growth and how he helps Thor, even though the dialogue sucked. Then they leave the film and Thor gets 2 screaming goats. Like the meme. So you all need to apologize to Black Panther for the what are those joke right now. These 2 stupid goats are more important to the plot than the Guardians of the Galaxy. Then God Butcher, played by Christian Bale, kills his god because his daughter died, and the god goes, don't grab that pointy sword over there, that would kill me. Wow, that would be really inconvenient if you grab that sword. Please, whatever you, don't grab that sword. Jane Foster comes back in this movie, and based on the trailers, I don't care. She wasn't great in the other Thor movies, but Natalie Portman is a great actress, so I figured she'll be fine here. She's not. She has stage 4 cancer in the movie and decided, well, Mjolnir might heal me, so fucking whatever. I'm gonna die anyway, might as well try. So she can transform into Mighty Thor, and it was kind of cool because the hammer breaks into tiny pieces and then reforms when grabbed. Then the movie decides to be unfunny, and then there's this weird subplot where apparently Mjolnir and Stormbreaker are sentient, and Stormbreaker is jealous of Mjolnir, and they can move around and apparently speak. Because Jane said Mjolnir was calling out to her in New Asgard. So from this point forward, I'm just going to talk about spoilers. If you don't want spoilers, skip to the time code on screen. 3, 2, 1. So because God Butcher is so strong, Thor decides they need an army of gods to defeat God Butcher. So they travel with the Screaming Goats to the Godland, where they plan to meet Zeus and ask for help. Zeus is a dick and says no, and he wants to chill where it's safe. Thor, Mighty Thor, Valkyrie, and Korg fight him. Korg gets hit by a lightning bolt and then seemingly dies, but then he's fine, he's just a rock guy, and the face is fine, so that's the only thing that matters. And when you start faking deaths, that's when you start to lose me. Anyway, Thor throws Zeus's lightning bolt back at him and Zeus dies, so they steal his thunderbolt and run away on the Screaming Goats. God damn it. So without an army, they decide to fight God Butcher anyway. But before that, there's a scene with Korg narrating over footage of Jane and Thor's relationship, where he explains how they built walls around each other because Thor was afraid, and then Jane built walls because she was afraid. Then how she left a note and she broke up with Thor. Even though we know that, because Thor said that earlier in the movie. And who's Korg even talking to? At least at the beginning, the exposition was at least diegetically in universe because he's talking to people of the planet. But he's not talking to anyone now, he's just talking to the audience. This scene could have been more effective if you put some music over it and ditched the narration. It would still be redundant, but at least there would be some creativity I could say was put into it. They then make it to the black and white planet and God Butcher holds them captive and explains to the audience the character's backstory again. And when he goes to Jane, he says, ah, you have cancer and are going to die. Do you think this will save you? Oh, you idiot. And there's this rule in filmmaking called the show don't tell rule, where if you can show something happening, you do that instead of telling it. And this movie has very much decided not to do that. It's not a comedic narration. It feels as if they think the audience is too stupid to remember the plot. If there's one thing you should never do is talk down the audience. Being shown something visually and getting the story from the visuals is always stronger than just exposition. Thor calls Stormbreaker to fight God Butcher, and the fight was alright. It was black and white, and God Butcher uses shadows to fight, so it's kind of interesting visually. If there's anything good in this movie, it is God Butcher, although there isn't really much to him. Thor calls the Bifrost, but then God Butcher steals Stormbreaker and uses it to see eternity, which if he sees can grant any wish. So he wants to wish for all the gods to die, but all you need to open the way to eternity would be the Bifrost. So why didn't Hela from Ragnarok ever do this when on her warpath with Odin? She could just wish to conquer all 9 realms. Thor ends up giving all the kidnapped kids thunder powers, and it's fine. It's dumb, but it's fine. Then Thor fights God Butcher, but then Jane shows up and helps. Thor defeats God Butcher, they destroy his sword, but then he just walks into eternity. And before he wishes all gods die, Thor then explains, "You don't want revenge, you want love. You've been alone so long and you're so sad because I was so sad and you should choose love." And then he realizes he can wish for his daughter to come back to life. So he does that and tells Thor to take care of her and he dies. So the power of love wins. Are you fucking kidding me? You know, at the beginning of the movie with Jane, she says that the wormholes in the universe are similar to that in Interstellar. I jokingly said, wouldn't it be funny if the power of love was the main reason the movie happens? And then it is. No. The only reason Jane becomes Mighty Thor is because Thor loved her really hard. Guess he didn't love his mom, or his dad, or Loki, or his friends. Either way, the movie ends with Korg narrating again, and they say, "That's the story of Thor, Love, and Thunder."
That makes you the Scarlet Witch.
Congratulations, Link. You've become the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I
I
swear,
Zack
this is the
Snyder's
last
Versus.
chapter in our
I'm
marriage story.
Spider-Man
I'm
2.
John Wick, 2014.
There be.
You truly are the full metal alchemist, brother. Then there's a post-credit scene where Zeus explains in detail, "Nobody likes gods anymore. We should make them suffer. Hercules, my son, kill people." Again, because they need to explain the character's motivation, because we might have forgotten. Then Hercules shows up and the scene ends. The effects in this movie are really bad. Part of me thinks the shadow monsters used by God Butcher were used so they could hide CGI mistakes. The fight scenes are so dark so that they can hide the CGI. There's a scene where Heimdall's son projects himself into a room and it looked like this. Hey guys, it's me, Sans Undertale. It is me, Sans Undertale speaking. I am Sans Undertale, and I am Sans Undertale, and this is a true Undertale. I don't blame the VFX artists who are overworked, as is, but I do blame Marvel for all the changes they have them do all the time, giving the VFX artists no time to fix things that would otherwise be fine.
With Murdoch here and catching the brick, that was like originally not a brick.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Wait,
Wow.
was it like a hot dog or something? Like
It was a snow globe.
A snow globe.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so that's one of those creative decisions that came after the fact.
But don't just take my word for it, take Taika Waititi himself.
Does that look real?
In that particular shot, no, actually. See this shot? Like it's because it used to be when he would wake up. That was my reaction. But you just left it there randomly. But I kind of don't mind it. Yeah, look.
It's unmistakable.
You said that.
I never noticed it. I was never looking at you.
Trust me, I did.
To be fair, being on a video like this is kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. But the fact that there was a splice of 2 shots is very telling to me. Mighty Thor's helmet looks goofy and obviously fake. Like, they could have just given her a helmet. Korg has these scary human eyes, and they didn't look like that in Ragnarok at all. In this, he looks more like the Gnome King from Return to Oz. The most visually interesting part of the movie was the credits. I don't mean that backhandedly, it's just they actually used the 80s aesthetic. The score was shockingly lacking, both licensed and originally composed. I like all the licensed music, but there wasn't a memorable sequence with it. The only memorable one was the fight scene between God Butcher and Thor, but the 80s aesthetic the film has for the cover art is nowhere present in the film. It's so out of place and felt like they just did it because that's what they did in Thor Ragnarok. But the original score for the film is so lackluster, which is shocking because Michael Giacchino, who did the soundtrack for Ratatouille, Up, and The Batman, the best song is Mama's Got a New Hammer, but everything else is pretty forgettable. Everyone feels like they're phoning in their performance. Russell Crowe as Zeus was probably the worst in the film. I laughed every now and then, but they pulled too many jokes too fast. It doesn't let any of the jokes breathe, so you start to get sick of them real fast. And it's not like the jokes are that great to begin with. There is worse within the MCU for sure, but still, this was really disappointing. I give Thor Love and Thunder a 3 out of 10.